So I guess that Steinbrenner Field can work for both teams, not just the opponents, because apparently the Rays just kept batting around the other night. 9 runs in 1 inning. I turned on the TV, and it was already, I think, 11-1 or something like that. And we were barely, I don't know what, we were not even halfway through the game. Shane Baz was dealing.
Yes, he was. A career-high 11 strikeouts.
Yeah, he was tremendous. That's a couple of great starts for him now back-to-back. But, hey, if you get the ball up in the air, it will travel. Yandy Diaz likes to start games now with home runs, so that's a nice way to begin. But all in all, the Rays are swinging the bats. And by the way, I'm kind of a fan of the 2 guys who didn't start the year in Tampa. The M&M boys have come.
Yes, Maris and Mantle, right?
Yeah, Maris and Mantle have come to Tampa Bay. Seriously, these guys have pretty much, cemented, I think, that their place. They're not going back down as guys like Richie Palacios comes back, right? With Misner and
well, it's going to be interesting because Palacios is probably getting close to coming back.
Probably this week because he's going to play a couple games in Pensacola. I think he was with the Birmingham team, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Mangum is batting 311.
Wow.
Misner's batting 400.
I love it.
Send them now. I mean, realistically, Palacios comes back. Coco Montez is going down.
Well, yeah, okay. You still got a spare part there you can move, but
right.
No. These 2 guys. Not only are they not going down, they got to stay in the lineup, man. You have to keep these kids in the lineup. And I say kids. One of them is 29 years old, but you got to ride the wave that they have going here.
Well, how about Jake Mangum beating out a grounder? Up 15-1.
Yeah, no, he hustles, man.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely, and he can fly. But he busts everything down to first base. I met Mangum. I think we talked about this. His dad began his NFL career just across the street. Where now Raymond James Stadium is. At the time, it was Tampa Stadium or Houlihan's or whatever they called it back in the day. And he was here for essentially a training camp. He ended up going to the Bears, and I remember the Bucs going against him. And of course, I remember him. That was my first year with the Bucs, and I remember thinking, why'd they let this guy go? If he can play for the Bears, he should have been good enough to play here. And so I talked to him a little bit, his son, about just the juxtaposition. Right, he's beginning his major league career just across the street from where his dad played in the NFL. But what a nice kid, He
was on the radio post-game show with Neil Solondz and Andy Freed tonight.
Was he? Yeah,
and they were talking to him about his hustling and his place. He goes, hold on, no. He goes, no, forget about me. Don't talk about me. Talk about Taylor Walls and the grounder he beat out in the third, which actually really kind of extended it. He hustled, beat out a double play grounder.
He did, yeah.
That extended the third inning, which then ended up being the 9-run inning.
And,
yeah. They blew the game open at that point.
Yeah.
But he was all about, don't talk about me. Let's talk about Taylor Walls and what he did.
Yeah.
To extend that inning, beating out the double play.
Yeah. So we were talking to him the other day before the game, the one that I did that the Rays won last Friday night, and talking about his start and whatever. And he was like, "Yeah, man." He goes, "But you know what? We got to start winning. We have to start." He did not want to talk about personal, triumphs or anything like that. He was really, bent on but we really need to start winning. I like them both, and they're both great stories, and I think it's cool that they've jumped in here early in the season and contributed as much as they've had offensively, defensively, stealing bases. These guys, get around, and I think the Rays are really good at putting pressure on the defense, stealing bases. So they're a fun group. There's some youthful energy. There's obviously some veterans and guys like Yanni and guys like that. But the starting pitching, has been fairly exceptional. When Baz has been just terrific, and I wasn't sure what to expect from him to start the year. So they're getting along, and these are 2 big series because it's the first foray into the AL East. It's just game 1 of the Red Sox series. Then you got the Yankees coming in after that to wrap up a 13-game homestand. So they're back. They're 8-8 now. They're 500, right?
Yeah, they're 1 game out of first place.
Yeah,
as bad as I shouldn't say bad. As inconsistent as they've played the first 6.
Yeah, it wasn't good, right?
Right. They're 500 in a game out of first place.
Yeah, right. And believe me, they can pitch with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that they're capable, at least, of swinging the bats, especially at home. What was cool to see was that the ballpark can work for them too. You know what I mean? Like you can hit some big flies. And Junior Caminero and those guys, they're starting to come around now. You're starting to see the power start to develop. Yandy, obviously, we talked about with the leadoff home runs, and it's always great to get off to a fast start. So slowly but surely, like this Steinbrenner thing with all these home games, could turn out to be a pretty decent home series, and maybe they can separate themselves and take that AL East lead, and then obviously when you get to August and September, it's going to turn, and they're going to be on the road a lot. But man, the games. And it's aesthetically, of course, I've been to a game and we talked about how you can hear the fans and you're right on top of the action. I'm starting to like the way it looks on TV even. I mean, it's a minor league park. There's not 3 decks and all that. But I just outdoor baseball, right? Like it's going well and they're starting to settle in.
I know the Red Sox guys were talking about, the broadcaster and stuff, how it sounds fuller. It sounds bigger.
Yes.
Than Tropicana Field in their broadcast and the mics, and it's just because everyone's so close.
That's it. Because you get like even if you had 20,000 at the Trop, there was just sort of this white noise hum, but no individual. Like you can hear the heckling, but you can also hear more clearly the fans in general, and it is the intimacy of it, and sort of you're sitting on top of the fans where we are in the press box and stuff like that. It's just really cool. It's just aesthetically pleasing, and you'd like for them to start to begin to establish that home field advantage. Although the pitchers have to keep the ball in the ballpark, and they certainly did that with Boz. And that's another thing. It shows you, whether you're Drew Rasmussen or Shane Boz, if you pitch well, you're not going to give up a lot of home runs, right? Like he threw a lot of strike ones. He attacked the zone. He's got great velocity and things like that. But man, you get Shane Boz going, and listen, every guy they run out there, it seems so far this year, with maybe the exception of like Zach Littell or somebody, they've all, been what we thought they were, and they still don't have Shane McClanahan, and of course you just, brought up the flamethrower from Durham who you can bring back. So, I kind of dig this team a little bit. Like I wasn't sure. I thought the Trop, was that's what they're built for, right? Like a bigger ballpark and speed and athleticism and that. But they're capable. They're more than capable of hitting home runs, and they're going to need to hit home runs, and they're going to need to tack on runs. That was the good thing to see, was that they didn't stop scoring. And I think that's sort of the lesson. Not that you deliberately take your foot off the gas. You don't. But in as much as they've got this sort of killer mentality now, that's what you need at that stadium. You really do, because you don't know how many runs it's going to take game in, game out. And that was a fun game. If you're a Rays fan, other than the fact that I thought it was going to last about 5 hours, I'm like texting you like, oh my God.
I was asking, where's the run rule? I'm used to my son's baseball tournaments. There's run rules after 3 and 4 innings. So,
which is like the greatest rule ever. It's so needed, and yeah, put that in Major League Baseball for a change, because that's the way they were headed. So yeah, fun at the old ballpark. I might be going back out there, I think, maybe on Friday. I'm going to catch the would that be the first game of the Yankee series? Yeah, it would be, right?
No, Thursday is. It's Thursday. Yankees are a 4-game series.
Okay. All right. But I get to see the Yankees, and probably a lot of crowded press box, because there'll be a lot of Yankee writers there. And yeah, so you got some more games coming in here back to back to back. We know, I guess, sort of what the Tampa Bay Lightning is looking at. They clinched. We can talk about that here in just a minute, and we'll do that right after this. Want you guys to get on down to International Plaza Mall, see our friends at Breitling Boutique. The Breitling company has been in business now for over 140 years. They've been making the best Swiss watches in the world, and you can have one of those as well if you're looking for a great timepiece, one that you'll be proud to own for generations to come. Get on down to Breitling Boutique. They're in the middle of the mall. If you go to the center of the mall, International Plaza, go upstairs, you're going to find them. And this store is unique in terms of its customer service. I mean, they are obviously used to dealing with lots of celebrities, sports figures. You'll see a Buccaneer or two in there from time to time. they're going to treat you like a celebrity as well. Go check out their Navitimers. Their Chronomats is what they're known for. Gorgeous men's watches, and they've been also celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary with the 32 team watches while supplies last. That's the key. Go on our website. You might be able to check out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team watch. It has the face, the color of the team that you might be rooting for, as well as the logo. These things are spectacular. But they also have watches for your wife, for your girlfriend, sports watches, all kinds of different colored wristbands. These are durable. They're gorgeous. She's going to love them. And if your wife or girlfriend is on the go like mine, it's the perfect watch for her. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure when you go, you let them know that you heard about all of this on Sports Day Tampa Bay. So the Lightning clinched now.
Well, they clinched a playoff berth previously.
Yeah, but now they're going to have home ice, right?
Yeah, the Panthers lost to the Rangers tonight, and the Panthers will be at Amalie Arena actually Monday night. They'll be at Amalie Arena tonight.
Gotcha.
But that loss by the Panthers means that the Panthers cannot overtake the Lightning. So the Lightning are guaranteed to finish in the top 2 of the Atlantic Division. Florida will be the 3 seed.
Okay.
Ottawa will be the 4 seed.
All right.
Most likely Tampa Bay will be the 2 seed and will host Florida to start, and they'll start on home ice.
Mm-hmm.
They can overtake Toronto if the Lightning win both games remaining. They host Florida tonight. They're at the Rangers Thursday.
Yeah.
If they win both of those, and at least one of them they win in regulation. And then Toronto has 2 games left, and I believe they play Buffalo and Detroit. If they lose both of those games in regulation, then Tampa Bay would be the number 1 seed. So it's probably not going to happen. Buffalo, Detroit, both out of the playoff hunt. They've been eliminated already. Toronto, you would expect, will get at least a point somewhere along the line there.
Yeah.
And if they do that, then the Lightning will be the 2 seed to host Florida in the first round.
Which is fine. They made the playoffs and clinched a while ago, but to get Game 7 in your building, I think is big. I personally still think there's a lot of pressure when you do open the series at home because the expectation is not only you're going to win, but you're going to hold serve and win both games so you can maintain that home ice. But yeah, having Game 7, knowing that if it goes that far, it's in your building, certainly is an advantage. And look, they were going to have to probably beat Florida sooner than later. So it turns out it's probably going to be sooner. And they got to get some guys back healthy. I mean, they've got quite a few injuries they're still a little uncertain about, right?
Well, that's the hard part for Tampa Bay right now. So Luke Glendening, we know, got hurt last week, and initially was kind of, well, we're hoping, he's probably okay, but think for the playoffs. Then they changed it to out indefinitely. Don't know what that means. He did not practice on Monday. Then Oliver Bjorkstrand, we learned before Sunday's game, is out week to week with a lower body injury. That one doesn't sound too promising based on the way John Cooper talked about it. He was saying hopefully for the playoffs, but it doesn't sound like it'll be this first series at all. And then Darren Radish left Sunday's game hurt. Now, Rob Zettler, assistant coach, said that he is day-to-day, has a chance to play tonight against Florida. So most likely we'll skate at the morning skate and see how he feels. But that one doesn't sound too serious. But Luke Glendening and Oliver Bjorkstrand, I'm guessing you're starting the playoffs without those two, which is why they had called Connor Geekie up.
Right. And Connor, I think, didn't he get a goal in his first game back?
He did score Sunday in his first game back, yes.
Yeah. Which of those injuries would you be most concerned about if it turns out to be, well into the first series or beyond? Like, who can they least afford at this point? You don't want to be without anybody, but which player is harder to replace?
Well, of those two, I mean, Luke Glendening takes all your big faceoffs. So you have you need a right-handed shot faceoff guy anywhere, penalty kill, whatever. Like, he's going out there for it, and he's your best faceoff guy, period. So you're missing him. You can replace him on the power play or the penalty kill. We've seen Sunday night. You saw Gensel, you saw Yanni Gord out there. He's replaceable there. He's still really good there, but you can overcome that. Bjorkstrand, look, remember they acquired him at the trade deadline with Yanni Gord to add to that depth scoring. He's got a wicked wrist shot. He's a right-handed shot, which they don't have a lot of. That's a huge loss, Bjorkstrand. He was starting to really start to feel comfortable, and you see his scoring was moving up, and you're just seeing him in plays more. Like that loss to me is bigger than. I mean, they're both. You don't want to lose either one of them. But Bjorkstrand was supposed to help with that to flush out the 3 lines of scoring, and it's a big reason why. I didn't think Connor Geekie would be back up here this year. I thought he would stay and play the playoffs in Syracuse. I thought they, wanted him to stay down there and develop. But when you lose both Glendening and Bjorkstrand, you needed somebody that had potential to score and be a threat.
Right.
You weren't looking just for a 4th line guy to plug in. You're looking for a top 3 line guy that can put the puck in the net and make a difference. And that's what Connor had been doing in the minors. And he was lighting up at Syracuse, 11 goals in his 20 games down there. And so that's why they brought him up, and you're hoping that he can kind of fill some of that void for Bjorkstrand.
Yeah, I'm curious if you're John Cooper and you pretty much know what you have locked up, and there's maybe an outside chance something may change, but how do you play these next 2 games? In other words, does Vasi get one, both, either? What about the other players?
So I think Vasi probably plays tonight and takes off Thursday, if I had to guess.
Yeah, makes sense.
He didn't play Saturday. To be honest, I would have played him Saturday, let him take off against Florida and play against the Rangers. But that would have been. But they sit down with Vasi and decide what he wants to do, etc.
Sure.
My guess is that's the way they'll play it. The problem they have is they don't have any cap room to call anybody up, so they can't sit anybody.
Oh wow.
The way I understand it, there's no room to call up at least for tonight's game.
Interesting.
And they may have to play a man down. If Darren Radish can't go, they'll play with 17 skaters, not 18.
Oh wow.
They'll have 11 forwards and only 6 defensemen instead of 7.
Yeah.
So they only have 11 and 7 healthy if you're counting Radish healthy, because Glendening and Bjorkstrand are both hurt. So I don't think they can call up reinforcements. Now, the NHL allows you to go above the 23-man roster at this time of year, but you have to be cap compliant. And the Lightning are right at the cap, so there's no really room to pull anybody up.
Yeah.
So he can't really sit people. It's possible they may have enough cap space come Thursday's game where they could call somebody up and sit one person, but the hockey salary cap's a little tricky at times. It's more of a hard cap, but you accrue basically cash daily and stuff, and there may be a way to call somebody up for Thursday's game, but I don't think tonight they can. So,
I mean, for a long time I thought if the Lightning could avoid Florida in the first round, maybe that would be a good thing, right? And they eventually have to play them most likely anyway at somewhere down the line. But how have they matched up of late against Florida? And, is this, you just say, well, you got to beat them anyway, or is this an opportunity to maybe, finally like kind of slay the dragon? I mean, this has always been what the NHL wanted, right? When they have 2 teams in Florida to create this rivalry. Rivalries happen in the postseason. This has been a heated one, obviously. But what do you make of them getting Florida so early in the playoffs, if that's what happens?
Well, first of all, it's the 4th time in 5 years they're going to face.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
Third time in the first round. They faced in the second round one other time. But it'll be the 4th time in 5 years.
Wow.
Who is this Florida team? And I say that knowing Tkachuk is hurt. They've got a lot of players dinged up. There's a lot of players sitting out right now for Florida.
And that might work to their advantage that they're getting them in the first round, because Tkachuk may not be ready, right? Early in the early games.
Or may not be 100%. Aaron Ekblad is suspended for the first 2 games of the playoffs.
Oh, wow. That's big.
He got suspended for 20 games. It was 18 games left in the season. He's going to miss the first 2 games.
Wow.
Florida's been a team all year. I mean, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they got talent, sure. But
they look like a team that a lot of times went through the motions after going to 2 straight Cup finals. And we've seen that here in Tampa Bay. There were times in the 21-22 season when they got to the Cup final, lost to Colorado in 6 games. But there were times in that regular season you were like, they don't have it. And part of it is just the grind of 2 straight Cup finals before.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of extra hockey you play.
Yeah.
When you go to the Cup final 2 years in a row is incredible. And that's what Florida has done the last 2 years. So is some of their play this year just that? Or is it they're not as good of a team? How healthy will Kachuk be? How healthy will the other guys be that have been sitting out? How will Aaron Ekblad look when he comes back? Now, Ekblad has said, hey, this is kind of a blessing for me. My body's never felt better going into a playoffs. But he also hasn't played in 2 months. So we'll see how that does too when he comes back in game 3. So, look, the hockey playoffs are kind of, especially the first round, are some of the most crazy playoffs you find. Like anyone can beat anyone the first round, and a lot of times there's crazy upsets. It's once you get past the first round, it kind of doesn't go chalk, but it's more predictable, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing about the first round of the playoffs, you never quite know how they're going to call the games.
Yeah, and I've always thought that hurt the Lightning because I think that, the Lightning have been, at least traditionally, a pretty good power play team.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get the calls, if they they swallow the whistles a bit, that can hurt their speed. It can hurt a lot of things, right? Like you're going to call the game differently, and they generally want the players to decide it. But that's not what it's been in the regular season. You could see that hurting one team or the other, couldn't you?
Well, the Lightning, the last couple games, they had no power plays on Friday night. They had one on Saturday or Sunday night.
Yeah.
They haven't had many of late, and that's kind of getting to what the playoffs may be more like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I always the Lightning are viewed as a finesse team, a high-scoring, potent team, which they are. I mean, they can put the puck in the net. They're the second highest-scoring team in the NHL this year.
They're fast. They get up and down the ice, yeah.
And teams, it's funny because throughout this 10 years plus of playoffs, particularly the last 5 or 6, teams think, "Oh, we can just beat the hell out of the Lightning."
Mm-hmm.
And the Lightning generally respond really well.
Mm-hmm.
They don't fight a lot. They don't have fighters per se on the team, but they don't shy from the physicalness. And a lot of teams think that, and sometimes you almost take yourself out of your game trying to get the Lightning into a physical game.
Egg them on, yeah.
And the Lightning can use that to their advantage at times. So, but Florida, I mean, if you want to get into the playoffs in a physical game, Florida's the team you want to go face. You'll get into the playoffs real quick against them.
Right.
In Toronto, you're not going to see as much physicalness. It's going to be a lot more high flying up and down the ice. And Toronto's kind of had Tampa's number this year.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they've scored 19 goals in the 4 games.
Wow.
Against the Lightning.
Mm.
Like I Toronto almost scares you a little more. I don't think their goaltending and their defense is as good as the other teams that you could face, the Ottawa, the Florida, in this bracket, so to speak, this 14 bracket, but they believe they can score on Vazzy. They believe they figured out Vazzy. That's evident this year.
Interesting.
Now, whether in the playoffs that happens and, whether the Lightning's defense can help Vazzy out in that too, but they have scored a lot of goals against Tampa Bay this year. They're not scared of the goalie.
Yeah.
At all.
How have the Panthers fared against them, though?
So the Lightning are 1-2 versus the Panthers this year.
Okay.
They lost 4-2 at Amalie Arena in December 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
Vasilevsky took that loss. The next night, they went down to Sunrise and won 4-0.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that. They were back-to-back games. They went down to Sunrise, yeah.
Jonas Johansson had 36 saves in that one.
He was really good, yeah.
Yeah. Then just in March, they went down. At the beginning of March, they went down to Sunrise again. Lightning lost 2-1. Vasilevsky was fantastic in that game. 27 saves.
I remember that, yeah.
But he played well there. So, Florida's a different type game. It's going to be more physical, more tight.
Mm-hmm.
Tight checking, maybe a little less space than what you would play Toronto with. But
yeah,
the Lightning, but they know these teams know each other well. I mean, they've played, like I said, 4 of the last 5 playoffs. This has been the Eastern Conference representative in the Stanley Cup final for the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that one of those teams has been in the final. Yeah,
yeah. It's a shame some of these matchups are in the first round.
I know, right?
In the Western Conference, Dallas and Colorado is going to be a phenomenal series.
Mm-hmm.
That should not be a first round series.
Right.
You hate to see, although to be honest, I haven't looked at it's close, but this may be the matchup if you played the Eastern Conference 1 through 8. Washington's the 1, Toronto's the 2.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if Carolina's ahead of Tampa Bay. They're close. But this could be the 4-5 matchup anyway, so it kind of works out. But it's going to be a good series. It's probably going to start this weekend.
Right. Either Saturday or Sunday.
The playoffs start Saturday. I would guess the Lightning start Sunday or Monday.
Yeah.
I think the teams that play Thursday and the Lightning are one of those aren't going to start on Saturday.
Well, that's a good thing from a newspaper standpoint since we have a public print section on Sunday. So we're lobbying the NHL. Please don't make them play Saturday afternoon because then all the readers that have forgotten, we don't,
I think TNT's window on Saturday, I think they have a couple games in the evening. I think they start at 5:30 or something.
Oh, okay.
And then ESPN has games Sunday all day.
Yeah.
They have a couple in the afternoon, couple in the evening. So
that'd be great to have an afternoon game.
But we do know that the first two games will be at Amalie Arena.
Yeah, and that comes with its own pressure and all of that. But, like you said, you get Game 7 there if you need it. And, hey, you got to get off to a good start anyway.
But here's the other thing. The Lightning are absolutely one of the best teams at home this year, period.
Yes,
They have not played as well on the road as some of the other top teams.
No, there's a big disparity in it. Yet, you're going to have to win on the road at some point. But, yeah, getting off to a good start, the fact that you have them where you want to play them.
Since January 1st, the Lightning are 17-2-3 on home ice.
Whew. Yeah, man. Keep that going. You'll go a long way for sure.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. We need to get Ed and Cena on.
We should. We need to. Yeah, with the playoffs starting, let's do that.
I'm putting it out there in the universe. I'm going to manifest that Ed and Cena.
Hello, Buddy Cop.
Yeah, Buddy Cop, the Tampa Bay Lightning beat writer for the Tampa Bay Times, joins us, and we'll talk a little playoff hockey. That'll be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. As long as he doesn't hold out for more NIL money.
What's going on with that, by the way? Okay, so the Tennessee quarterback, more or less, I guess he had over $2 million coming his way, and he wanted to double that essentially and make more than $4 million. And basically, Josh Heupel said, "Yes, see you later."
Yeah, he basically held out of a practice.
Wow.
They're in spring practice, I think they're close to their spring game. I don't know if it was this weekend or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
And he held out, and it surprised everybody. And then they basically said he wanted $4 million NIL, and they said, no.
That's fine on both counts. Like, it's their prerogative to say that's a bridge too far. But I know you have a different opinion about this. I think the kid's getting a lot of heat, right? Like, okay, so we've established they're professionals now, all right? And I'm going to guess, spitballing here, there's probably a university who will meet his price. And he probably knows this. Whoever they are, legally or otherwise, because I don't know what the rules are in college football anyway. I mean, this really is the Wild West. But if I'm playing college football and I can make $4 million over there, doesn't bode well for you and your teammates. Doesn't make you necessarily, a team first guy.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, $4 million is a hell of a lot more than $2 million, right? If you're playing football, and I don't really begrudge the guy for transferring. Maybe he could have handled it better, and it goes to the highest bidder and all of that. But somebody's going to pay this young man if he's that talented. They are.
Now there's reports that he threatened to hold out of the college football playoff because he wanted more.
Yeah, that one would not sit well with me. That would not. And it gets back to the whole, the whole deal is that, like, what is a contract, right? When is a contract a contract? What's enforceable? There's no real system in play, for the NCAA to kind of police this. I mean, it really is the Wild West right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see more of this.
I want the players to get paid, and I don't have a problem with players, NFL or whatever, getting the most money.
Right.
But there's also, like, if you have a contract,
it can't be broken.
I don't like the renegotiating. Like, I'm going to hold out to renegotiate because I don't like the contract I signed.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of defeats the purpose of a contract both ways.
You
wouldn't want the team to go, well, we're not going to pay you. We're going to renegotiate because you haven't performed the way we hoped you would when we paid you this much money. Like,
yeah,
part of it, the purpose of having a contract. Now, at Tennessee, what was said behind the scenes, what's led up to this.
Sure.
Everybody's just speculating. Nobody really knows.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just, if you threaten to sit out the college football playoff to raise your NIL money, like, if I'm an NFL team, which I'm assuming is ultimately his goal, like, culture and team and you've got to be kind of the ultimate team guy. Quarterbacks get paid the most when you're really good, but that's what you threatened your team with at the time you're in the playoff. Like, that's the fun time. I mean, I get you're trying to make money, but if that's true, what kind of character, what kind of leader are you on a team? At a quarterback, at the position that has to be the leader on the team. I think there's a lot of organizations that would think twice about that kid.
I'm sure there are. And then there's probably one that will take him.
Oh, I'm not saying there's not one.
Or more.
But you definitely limit your options at that point.
Yeah.
I think, and like you said, there could have been things said from Tennessee's perspective that led to this. I don't know all the details, but what you're seeing reported,
it's messy.
You can handle it better.
Yeah.
But at that position, which is the leader of a football team, is just generally the face of your football team. And you need the players to rally around that guy.
Right.
What do the other players think? Wait a minute. He didn't hold out to get everybody more NIL money. He didn't say, hey, I want all my teammates to get more money. It was, I want more money.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold out of a playoff game.
Yeah. Well,
not a bowl game. Not a bowl game. Who cares about
the game I love? Yeah, we're talking about playoffs. Playoffs. I get it. That's the only thing you have, though, is to withhold your services. But it is granted, it's messy, and I think that they're going to have enforceable contracts with these players, right? Like if you sign and you're down on the paper for them, then that's what you have. And if you want to go play somewhere else, then if you're not going to honor your contract, you probably shouldn't be allowed to or sit out. I mean, there's got to be some punitive measures here that players aren't just going to hop for $1 more, I think.
Well, the other report I saw was that his dad was shopping around before the transfer portal opened.
Yeah, I saw that early, yeah.
Dan Lanning called Josh Heupel,
which is
the Oregon
cool,
coach, and was like, hey, by the way, his dad's asking around for money.
Yeah. Guess who's not happy, That's a tough way to find it out, but
yeah. Once you're in the portal, it's one thing, great, but
sure,
you're not supposed to, before you go in the portal, do that. I mean, that's all part of the limited rules that the NCAA actually has.
And that's the problem. They have so few, and which ones do they enforce? And it's kind of the Wild West and all of that. But yeah, that's kind of a messy one. I mean, I'm generally always on going to be honest. I want every player to get $1 more, whatever it takes. It is show business, not show friends, but there's got to be a contract that's enforceable that if you take the money initially, you're bound to that team and until or unless, you sit out or something happens where you can gain your free agent status again, in a sense, a little like, the NFL.
There was also reports that he wasn't living up to his end of the NIL stuff.
Yeah.
The signings, the events you have to go to, appearances, things like that. Like he wasn't doing those either.
Right.
Which leads back to the character part of it.
It does. And it's also, what's the enforceable part of it, right?
The enforceable part is, okay, I want more money. Nope. Done. See
right. And can these companies or whoever's paying his freight go back to him and ask for some money back? Like, you just don't know.
But, as he came and said, I want more money, they just went, nope, forget it.
Yeah. I respect that. I respect it. I do. If you're not going to mess with a guy and he's in it, you think he's in it for the wrong reasons and all of that, but I'm also for guys getting every dime they have coming to them. I just think that they're going to have to sign for more than just, I'm going to go 1 year at this school and then take $1 more at that school and finish up, with $2 more at school C. I don't necessarily think that helps anybody. It doesn't help college football, but it's an interesting case because he's a talent, at a big program, and they basically said, okay, we paid you what we're going to pay you, and you're going to have to walk from now. But they need a governing body. And it's probably going to turn into, the SEC Big Ten college football situation before it's all said and done. But you do need either a commissioner or some set of rules that everybody tries to practice and abide by. It's not always perfect, obviously, but man, this thing, yeah. And here's the other thing, Steve, is that if I'm a college player and I'm successful at what I do, even especially maybe a quarterback, and I'm making $4 million or $3.5, $4 million, and I'm making more money than I would if I went into the draft. I'm not in a hurry to get to the NFL. I'm not. That league's not going anyplace. But pretty soon, the league is going to be competing, for their own players because these guys are going to stay in college longer and longer. And I don't blame them.
Well, the decision you have to make as a college player is when do you go pro?
Yeah,
because at this point now, for the most part, you can make more in college.
Right, but then free agency is going to get you quicker if you go
exactly.
go now.
The quicker you get to the NFL, the quicker you get to free agency, which is where the bigger money happens. If you're good enough by then, if that 4 or 5 years, you're at a level that can command that kind of money.
That's right. You're betting on yourself. Yeah.
And the earlier you can get to the first free agent contract, the quicker you can get to a second and maybe get another big deal.
Right.
The longer you wait to come out, that second contract, you may be too old to get a big deal.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's the risk you take with it.
You got to weigh that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how good do you really think you are? How good of a situation are you going to? Where exactly are you going to go in the draft?
Yeah.
It's not easy for these kids.
And I know guys that just enjoy the college game. Enjoy not having maybe what they know is going to be more pressure as a pro, being around friends, young people, whatever, and you can make a good wage doing it. Like, I get it. I think you're going to see more and more players kind of leaning that way. So we got the NFL draft coming up, man. There's a lot going on. It's going to be a week from Thursday.
Thursday, yeah. We're 9 days away.
That's it. And of course, the Bucs picked number 19, which is not necessarily ideal, but it just means they had a good season. So we'll talk about what Jason Light is thinking.
That's where they're picking now. We'll see if that's where
that's true. Yeah, we will. Although, and I was asked this question on Spectrum Sports 360, shameless plug. If you don't watch me on Monday nights, you don't know what's going on. About Jason Light's history of trading up. There's not a lot in his history about trading up. Now, he did it one spot with Tristan Wirfs. That worked out well.
Yes,
right.
It did.
He moved up one spot with San Francisco. I think he's more likely to go down. Although this year, he was kind of telling us that he don't see many teams trading, later in the first round, because he goes, you can basically get the same player, into the second round, that you could get at that spot. And what teams do is sort of like when they set their board is they try to have about 5 players, right, that they'd be good with, that they've done the evaluations, they know how these guys competed, but more than that, what are our needs? Who are the players that are likely to still be on the board? And they try to target like 5 guys, and if there's one, then you take them. If there's 3, then you got to make a decision based on how you have them ranked. So it's an inexact science at best, but I think Jason Light and them have done a good job with it, and for the most part, they stay. You come up with one of those players that are still there staring you in the eye. It's hard to give him up for an unknown 6, 10, 12, maybe the next round, just to pick up some extra draft picks. I think you're going to have a player there you really like, and you're probably going to draft him. And so I don't expect to see a lot of trades. I don't expect Jason necessarily to trade. Now, having said that, watch he'll make a blockbuster one. But
I think if he trades, I think you're more likely, particularly in the first round, I think it's more likely he moves up a spot or 2.
Yeah,
that he had 4 or 5 players, and there's only one left.
And they're running out. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I'm afraid I'm going to lose him.
That's when you get
I don't think he's going to move up to 10.
No, but that's when you get movement there.
Or if he's got 3 players left and someone really wants a player and he moves down 2 spots.
Yeah, still gets his guy. Yeah,
I don't think you're going to see massive moves this year for the Bucs draft.
Right,
but you could see a spot or 2.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see big moves this year. Sometimes you do, but this year, I think if anything, it's going to be there's only 2 guys left, and we're 3 picks away that we want.
Right.
Let me go up and make sure I get one of these 2. Or, hey, my pick's coming up, and I got 3 guys. I'm good moving down a spot or 2 because somebody else wants to come up and make sure they get the guy they want.
Right. And that happens a lot where you're down to 1 or 2 guys and you got to make sure you get yours. And I think they'll have those positions, kind of targeted and whatnot. Jason does a good job. His team does a good job of finding the right players of late. And I don't think this year will be any exception, but The draft is fun. It's 3 days, a lot of work. But you see what happened last year, and I wrote about this on Sunday in the Tampa Bay Times. Like that draft class last year, Jason Light has said, if I knew Bucky Irving was going to do what he did, I'd have probably taken him in the first or second round. Now, don't know what that means for Graham Barton, but it's a good negotiating soundbite for Bucky Irving when he gets to free agency is, yay, I should be paid like a first rounder. But it's true. Him and Jalen McMillan, you go to Graham Barton, the first pick in the draft for the Bucks, how well he played. Chris Braswell, I think, is going to get better. He wasn't quite there yet in his rookie season. Only had a sack and a half. Tyke Smith was terrific. So, they've drafted really, really well. And if they have another one of those where you get 2, 3, maybe 4 guys to make consistent, appearances for you and play good football, that's the key. They're one of the youngest teams in the league, and I think they will be again this year. So. They feel good about where they're at, and if they had to play a game tomorrow, I think they'd be very, very competitive. But you always want to come away from the draft feeling like you got your club better, and that's what Jason Light has done. I trust those guys that they'll get it right, even without John Spytek now in Las Vegas. They'll find a way to find their best needs. Okay, so get your mailbag questions in. We got time for those later this week. You can do that on Sports Day TB is our Twitter handle. You can send it to me at NFL Stroud, or my email address is rstroud@tampabay.com. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Check out the Chronomat watches, the Navitimers. They've got the NFL's special 104th year anniversary team watches, 32 teams while supplies last. And, of course, watches for your wife, your girlfriend, beautiful sports watches, all kinds of wristbands. It's Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I am Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.